Hygiene is a very serious issue for many men. When I worked in corrections, I can't tell you how many times I used to have to work. I used to have to, do groups and things like that. Educating people about hygiene, especially men. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I have worked many years with men and women who have been victims and perpetrators of abuse. And I wanted to kind of come on here and stitch this video, so be sure to go back and watch this creator's video. He talks about how, he's been going to the gym, and what he's noticed is that there's been an astounding number of men that he's encountered at the gym that don't smell good. And so it's pretty apparent that they don't shower. And I'll piggyback on that. Throughout my criminal justice history, in terms of being employed, I've worked with, I've worked with men and women, and I've also worked with children and juveniles as well. And so this has been a common issue across all disciplines, even with men and women. But what I will say is I have seemed to encounter it more with working with men, especially in the criminal justice system, where they just would not shower, and they would, shower and, let's not even get started on brushing teeth. So it would just be this thing where it's pretty standard. And, I did a lot of education around sort of educating people on how to shower, why to shower, what you need to do, the whole shower routine. And, it's interesting. I would talk this. I was one of the only people that was doing this in terms of group education and stuff like that. And I talked to the corrections officers. I'm like, why aren't you guys telling these, you guys are men. Like, it's better to hear that coming from another man. They're like, I'm not doing that. And that's sort of how it would be. It's just be like, but it's just sort of this thing where, men get comfortable sort of living in their own funk. And there can be some reasons behind that, right? And you guys, I've done a video before, way back when, on, men who've encountered and have been sexually abused and such, who don't shower or who don't practice hygiene skills. But there's also people that just don't have, so there could be that aspect to it. But there's also people that just don't have good hygiene skills, just in general. Like, they'll say no, they don't have any abuse history, but they just don't like showering. They just run in and run out. Or they just feel like, it's prison in general, or even jail, or any place where you have a whole lot of people housed like that. It just doesn't smell good. And so they're just like, well, I'm just kind of going along with what's already in here. And so it's like, yeah, don't add to it, and so that could be a sign of, just, people that just don't want to do it. And it's not just showering, but it's like other things too, to manage, care. And so that would be a large part of what I have to do to educate men on doing that. But what is astounding to me is it's interesting that other men don't like to speak. For whatever reason, men don't speak to other men about them showering and how they need to get up and shower. And I'll tell you, there's one celebrity on record, and I usually try to stay away from them unless it's been publicly talked about. But, a lot of people have talked about how Brad Pitt doesn't smell good and will go, days without showering. His roommates have talked about it. Some of the women he's been with, don't take my word for it. You can Google it, where it's been like, it would almost be like a competition to see who can go the longest without showering and taking care of their hygiene. And again, I find that this happens a lot as well. But even with, especially when you're dealing with people who have pathological personalities, I think this kind of stuff, and not to say that Brad Pitt has that, but just moving on. But when I'm dealing with people who have pathological personalities, this definitely can become a big issue, where it's just like, I'm not doing it. It's almost like an act of defiance and like doing that. And, true story. Men would be out there like fighting and doing stuff And I'm like, my whole thing is like, you don't need to raise up nothing until you hop in that shower. Like no arm, no leg, no nothing needs to be lifted until you hop in that shower and lift it to, soap, soap, water, soap, water, soap, soap, and, let the soap marinate. And, I would just kind of tell them, hit those hot spots, and leave that soap on for a minute, just leave it on for a minute, maybe 2 or 3, shampoo too, and, all this other kind of stuff. Let it marinate, because that, that funk is sunken in. And change clothes. That's the other thing too. People might go in and shower, and then they put back on the same clothes. And this is like an issue with hygiene. And it's not just, so I've noticed it over the years, especially when working with men. Another man who's gone on record, another celebrity man who's gone on record was, Ray J. And I think he talked about, I don't know if it was, but he did an interview. I don't know if he said it was Little Kim or, some older woman that he was with. He was like, I didn't take care of my hygiene until I got with this person. And she actually taught me, how to shower and take care of my hygiene. So, that was astounding to me, because this guy was already, somewhat of a celebrity by then. So, it just really struck me. But I'm not surprised by it working with men as long as I have, that, hygiene is definitely an issue. And sometimes, it's a bigger issue of how people need to be taught on how to do that. But once a week, once every other week, it would just be, therapy about how to take care of that, and, just wash it up and take care of it, and like change clothes after you wash. Do not put back on the same clothes, and that kind of stuff. And then for people that had a severe history of abuse and things like that, of course, we would definitely talk about and process those things as well. But yeah, that seems to be a thing. And I think it helps when other men talk to men about how to shower. Of course, people like me and other people do it, can certainly have those conversations, but there's something about, men who talk to other men, and not in a condescending way, but just in a way that's like, sort of mentorship, leadership. This is how men are supposed to do things. It's interesting, what I found. Men will talk to other men about sex and things like that before they talk about necessities such as hygiene and taking care of yourself. But that's just my 2 cents. Like, follow, and share if this has been helpful.